What is going on, guys? This is Miasin. So I don't know if you guys have been keeping track of the upcoming, or rather already existing trends. Well, not really, because it's for the upcoming format for Phantom Nightmare in the competitive scene in the TCG. Basically, a lot of pro players, like very high-level players, are hating Ashe so much that they're considering just dropping this card altogether and not playing it, which is very interesting considering the fact that for the longest time, this card has been considered one of the best hand shop, if not the best hand shop to play ever since like Maxi was banned, because you know this card is so generic, it hits just about everything. If you see it in your hand, it basically can always be used against other players, whereas other hand shops like Dueling and Nibiru, they're really hit or miss. When they're hit, they're really good, but when they're missed, they're just like, you're basically hand looping yourself for one card in your hand and it feels really bad. But Ashe is not really like that, so the card has like very few drawbacks, but unfortunately, since this is a fire format, and Ashe is a fire monster, it can really backfire on you. And the main reason for that is because it can be revived back off of your opponent's Hita, and then Hita can, obviously link into either Celine or Promethean Princess. Princess could go into like an Amblo Whale, or you could just straight up keep the monster. If you revive back something like an Arvata, that is good for you. You know, there's a few things that you can do with that, but the fact that you're getting Princess in the Grave is already very relevant. Celine can climb into an Appaloosa, and then if you still have like an extender to push through that Ashe, then you can keep playing the game, and then further hand traps would be completely dead. So sometimes people have like Ashe and another hand trap, and it's still not enough to stop their opponent, which is very interesting because usually when you have stuff like Imperm and Nibiru, it is enough to stop their every deck, every like semi-combo deck in their tracks. But unfortunately, with Ashe, that is not really the case because you're almost helping your opponent out with Hita. Now, for example, against the Snake Eyes deck, the applications of Ashe sometimes are just so incredibly weak that it doesn't even feel like that worthwhile to use. Like, for example, are you Ashing a Bonfire? Well, it depends on the context, obviously, but what if you're going second and your opponent has 5 cards, first card is Bonfire, are you Ashing that? Maybe yes, maybe no. If the first card that your opponent uses is Bonfire, then it means that your opponent didn't physically hard draw Snake Eye Ashe, because otherwise he would have went for that instead, since this card actually plays around Joel, whereas this one doesn't. But maybe your opponent has Wanted or Diabellstar, and he really is trying to bait you with that Bonfire. So that's the reason why Ashing a Bonfire I can understand why people would want to do that, because you're kind of just making a read, and you're making a call, basically. Like, your opponent might actually have bricked, and then the Ashe would be insane. But again, sometimes it really straight up just does literally less than nothing. And yeah, you're not really trying to Ashe a Wanted either. Like, under no circumstances. That's really bad. That's like literally zero value whatsoever. The only thing it does is that, I guess if your opponent goes like Diabellstar and then goes into original Sinful Spell Snake Eye and then you Ashe that, your opponent won't, like, your opponent can still get a draw with the graveyard effect of Wanted, but it's still worth it to just hold it for the original Sinful Spells the majority of the time. So I wouldn't Ashe Wanted either. I would not Ashe the search effect of Ashe. I can't believe this is actually a thing. Ashing Ashe. But yeah, I wouldn't do that, and I would not Ashe a Populist either. That's the thing with Ashe, you know, like, even against like the best decks, there's like very little to Ashe. Like, you could Ashe the second effect of Ashe, which is the effect to special summon a Snake Eye monster from the deck. That's actually not too bad, or you could hold it for the Oak, it's really up to you. Or you could straight up hold it for the original Sinful Spell Snake Eye. That's already a much better application. But then again, it can very much backfire against you if your opponent can summon 2 monsters on the board. And trust me, you do not want to hold your Ashe for too long, because just with a few Snake Eye cards, your opponent can already climb into an Appaloosa, and then the Fire King portion of the deck is going to be 100% safe. So it's not like you can say, well, I'm just going to hold my Ashe for the Fire King Island. It's not worth it, trust me. It does way less than you think, and Fire King Island, if your opponent's first action is to go Fire King Island effect to search and to try to destroy and then search, you can tell 100% that your opponent bricked, because that is usually like the last thing the Fire King deck actually wants to do, at least the Snake Eyes Fire King deck, not really like the pure Fire King deck. That's a different story. But I would definitely Ash Farking Island if it's the first thing I see. But otherwise, if my opponent starts immediately with Snake Eyes, that applies so much pressure that you like eventually have to Ash somewhere. But again, not too early and not too late. So that's again another reason why I can understand the frustration behind people just not really being satisfied of the power level of Ash, which is also the reason why they're replacing it with other hand traps. Again, Droll and Logbird, Nibiru, relatively good against the Snake Eyes deck. And then Valor and Imperm, they're also decent, but they're more generic, I want to say, than these two hand traps. However, if you want to substitute Ash for another hand trap and not lose to Hita, there is Ghost Bell or Diddy Crow. Ghost Bell, I want to say, is the closest card there is to Ash because of the fact that if you do not play this card, you're going to be losing to a few decks that at least Ghost Bell can somewhat do something against. For example, without Ash, you do not have anything to stop a big Welcome Labyrinth, but Ghost Bell can still negate it, so it's not too bad. Against Branded Despia, Ash is just like Exodia, so that's the reason why it would feel so bad just not having this card in my deck and having some other hand traps, because Despia is really, really good at playing around Droll, Nibiru, Valor Imperm. They can do so much, like, they can go Branded Opening on draw phase to play around both Valor and Droll, and then they can get multiple searches, actually. They have a lot of plays, and they can easily dodge Valor and Imperm naturally with Blazing Cartesia to fuse, or Branded in red. So not playing like the one hand trap that is Exodia against them feels really bad again, but you can still Ghost Bell the Albion the Sanctifier Dragon, which is the card that gives you the Gimmick Puppet Nightmare. But then they can negate it with Trabergate Mercurier, which again feels horribly bad. And that's the reason why, even though Ghost Bell is not too bad, it's just not good enough, I want to say. Against the Branded Chimera deck, Ghost Bell is dreadful if that is your one replacement, because Ash stops Mirror Swords Knight in order to summon the Baphomet, which is also a turn-skipping card. It's a very similar problem than with the Branded Despia deck. The one difference is that the Chimera deck, even though it's really linear, the power level is a little less... It's a little lower, but then you have like two power cards. Like you have Mirror Swords Knight and Branded Fusion if you are choosing to play that engine. Or you also have the Horus engine, but then you randomly play into Droll, and then you can't even like search with the Baphomet, so that's also kind of whack. Yeah, you're trying to play around Ash, but then you're playing into another hand trap, so I wouldn't really necessarily say that a Horus Chimera is a good solution to the deck. You might as well play Crossout Designator while you're at it. Now again, if you're not playing Ash, there are a lot of benefits to that. You are dodging Crossout, you're dodging Call by the Grave, and you're dodging Talents. But that is only true if you're choosing to play Board Breakers instead of hand traps. So that's the reason why I want to say in this video, my personal opinion about Ash is if you are choosing not to play it, you might as well just not play other hand traps, period, while you're at it. And you might as well just commit to a board breaker approach. You're already not playing the best hand trap, or at least the most generic one, so might as well play the board breakers that at least are good against the decks that scare you, which are Snake Eyes and Fire King. Super Polymerization is one of them, but very skillful players. They know how to beat this card, and that's what scares me. They can easily end on monsters with different attributes, and Super Poly is not really good here. So that is a problem. Forbidden Droplet is decent, but it has a lot of dead matchups. You don't really want to draw droplets against, like, I mean, Shifter decks, obviously, but then, like, even against Labyrinth, it's not really good. Against the Chimera deck, it's not good enough going second. Like, sure, you can negate Guardian Chimera, but, like, ooh, it doesn't matter. It's not enough. It's actually good against Despia if they go for the Gimmick Puppet Nightmare lock, or if they are just playing, like, regular Despia with, like, the Mirror Jade, you can still negate that. And then Triple Tactic Talents and the Thrust. I mean, Talents is just like easily one of the best cards and one of the biggest MVPs of the upcoming format. So main decking this card over hand traps can definitely be very logical. And Thrust, I am very skeptical on whether I want to main deck it or not. I don't think it's a great card to main deck, but I do think it's really nice in the side deck. Because if you're going first, there's very little that you can set with this card. It's only really good going second when your opponent has a body on field so that you can search and use it right away. But yeah, if you're going first, you might as well just play Infinite Impermanence as your one and only hand trap, because this is the safest hand trap in Yu-Gi-Oh! It doesn't lose to like Call by the Grave, Talents. You can draw it for turn and it's still very good. It's relatively generic. It's much better than Valor. The one drawback with Imperm is that since it is not a monster, obviously, and it's not a spellcaster, you cannot revive it back with Celine. So if you are playing Celine in your deck yourself, you would have to rely on spellcasters getting your grave the hard way. Maybe going like Magician's Soul, send Diabellstar, that is a respectable solution. Yeah, there are some other decks again that Ash unfortunately would be really good against, but if you are not playing this card, you might regret it, like seriously. Against the Purely deck, some of your hand traps are going to be completely dead. Sometimes Droll is useless, sometimes it's decent, it really depends on the hand. Nibiru, on the other hand, 100% useless. And then Veilor and Imperm, they are either like very good or complete garbage because your opponent has the field spell, and then you cannot target the monsters. And Ghost Bell is also not the best solution to Ash here because there's like nothing that really interacts with the graveyard that much that you can bell. Like even the Pure Lily, the level 1 monster that targets in the grave, you can't bell that because it's not trying to like recycle back to the hand or special summon from the grave. It's really just trying to attach a spell card to it and then Xyz summon a monster over it. So yeah, Ghost Bell is completely dead. But DD Crow on the other hand would be extremely good. So that is the weird interaction. But then again, DD Crow a little less good against Labyrinth. Yeah, sure, you can DD Crow the furnitures, but it's not as good as Ghost Belling the Big Welcome. So yeah, take that into consideration for the Purely matchup. Against Silent Forcer, DD Crow, not the best card. Droll is relatively good. I mean, actually, I would say Droll is actually the best hand trap against them. But sometimes it does nothing because they just randomly hard draw like the cards that they need. Nibiru, 100% dead. It does nothing because, first of all, they have an Omni Negate, and second, they only need 2 summons to play the game. Veilor and Imperm, sometimes they do nothing because they go straight Ritual Summon, Tribute Novox, and then Revive back, and then there's nothing to Imperm. Or you Veilor or Imperm the Diviner or Novox, and then your opponent goes Seravis Negate, and then you are looking like a moron because you hand loop yourself for 1 card. So I can also imagine a world in which people choose not to play hand traps whatsoever just because of these little problems right here. I just listed a few of them, actually. Veilor and Imperm being very bad against Despia, Purely, potentially, Silent Forcer. So, while you're at it, again, if you're choosing not to play Ash, yeah, like I said, that's the reason why I say you might as well choose to play Board Breakers instead. But then, Flunderies, it's not necessarily the kind of deck that really loses that hard to Board Breakers. It really depends on how they play. But if they go for Shifter, then some of your hand traps at least can kind of stop them in their tracks. So it gives you a turn. Like, for example, you can Ash the Robina and then they're on top deck mode. Or you can Imperm that. You can't Veilor if they Shifter you. But then Droplet is completely useless. Super Poly is not going to save you, obviously. Triple Tactic Talents is just not enough if you let them, like, full combo. There's really nothing to steal. Like, you can steal the Impen, but they can still summon another one, and they can Rise at you. So it's not fantastic. Triple Tactic Thrust is just not gonna be good either. And yeah, I mean, if you're still playing Imperm, at least there's that. That card is very safe. Again, you can still use it under Shifter. I really like that. And again, another drawback of not playing Ash, if you are choosing to play other hand traps, is that you are going to lack a way to negate generic cards that search or draw cards. Like, Triple Tactic Thrust is always going to be resolving against you. That doesn't really feel too good. Pot of Prosperity, Extravagance, and Desires are also always going to be resolving against you. So, honestly, I want to say there's realistically not a single deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! That doesn't lose to Ash. Every deck eventually has to search or interact with the deck, and that's the reason why Ash is just overall a decent card. Even if you choose to like play it and like accept defeat against Hita, I still think it's a very good investment to play the card because like Hita reviving back your monster and going into a Link 3 and then a Link 4, it's not necessarily the end of the world if that's the only thing your opponent can do. So it's really just a matter of understanding how your opponent's deck works, when to time this card completely correctly depending on the circumstances, because obviously there's no real one card that you're always trying to hit. It really depends. Like, for example, again, Ashing Bonfire, usually that would be incorrect, so I can understand why people don't really want to play Ash when this keeps backfiring against them, but maybe you're just not really seeing, you know, far ahead. Maybe there is a better target for Ash to be used against Fire King and Snake Eyes, which is the reason why, again, I still recommend people to play Ash if they're going for a hand trap build, and if you're going for a board breaker build, then you can just settle on Imperm, and that is completely a-okay. But yeah, that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And let me know your thoughts about Ash in the comment section below. Do you think it's a good card? Do you think it's going to be very bad post-Phantom Nightmare? I want to hear all your guys' opinions. And yeah, that's about it for this video. I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.